You love me, right? So, my debt. It's our debt. The words floated into the air lightly, like a leaf drifting from a branch on a windy afternoon. But to me, they landed with the weight of a stone dropped into a deep well. My Seattle condo was bathed in the faint, golden light of the sunset. Streetlights outside casting pale streaks across the curtain and reflecting on the glass of red wine on the coffee table. I still remember the feeling. The silence was so thick you could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock. Claire sat across from me, her blonde hair draped over her shoulders, her grey eyes briefly darting toward the window, as if seeking an escape. We had been engaged for 6 months. Everything was supposed to be on track. To people with stable jobs, a cozy apartment downtown, and wedding plans finalized. I'd even put down a deposit for a photo shoot by Lake Washington, where we had our first date. Claire had once mentioned she loved the smell of lavender and the soft glow of candlelight. I had noted it all. I loved her, not with the reckless passion of youth, but with a mature, trusting love that had a clear future mapped out. That's why, when she said that sentence, I almost didn't register it. I smiled, trying to keep the mood light. What debt? You make it sound like you just mentioned a 6-figure number. She shrugged, swirling the wine in her glass, trying to sound casual. Just student loans. You know, UCLA wasn't cheap. And, well, I had to pay for everything myself. I asked, how much? She went quiet. Her gaze slid away from me, settling on the wall where a framed photo of us from Portland hung. I counted in my head 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Then she answered softly. Her voice so low I had to lean forward to hear. Around $150,000. I laughed, thinking she was joking. But Claire didn't laugh. She just looked down at the table, her finger tracing the rim of her glass, her lips pressed into a thin line. The silence stretched out like a taut, fragile wire ready to snap at the slightest touch. Are you serious? I asked, my voice dropping. Yeah, she whispered. It's from undergrad plus grad school. I didn't think you'd mind. Because when we get married, then my debt becomes ours, right? I felt my heart sink, and it wasn't because of the $150,000. It was the way she said it. The sentence was delivered as if she were discussing buying a new car or splitting the utility bill. No hesitation, no fear. I work in finance. I know exactly what that number means. It's 10 years of aggressive saving. It's crushing pressure. It's a deferred dream of buying a house. It's long nights worrying about rising interest rates. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. Can you show me the loan documentation? Claire looked up, a flash of surprise in her eyes. You don't trust me? The question was soft, but something in her tone made me pause. A hint of challenge, a flicker of hurt. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. The candlelight on the table reflected in Claire's face, making her eyes seem suddenly, strangely unfamiliar. A flood of memories rushed through my mind, her waking me up with coffee in the morning. Our weekend trips to the coast, the way she laughed at my bad jokes. All of it was now suddenly veiled by a creeping fog of doubt. I remembered meeting Claire at a startup conference. She was the one who initiated the conversation, her smile confident, her eyes bright. I'd always admired that independence, but now I realized that maybe that very independence had hidden a lot. She set her glass down, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't think you'd react like this. Aren't we supposed to face things together when we're in love? I swallowed hard, looking straight at her. Face things together, yes. But for me to face it with you, I have to know what you're carrying on your shoulders." The room fell silent. All that was left was the sound of traffic outside, the wind whistling through the window crack. She turned away, quietly saying, "I just didn't want to lose you over money." In that moment, I didn't know whether to feel pity or anger. I just knew that something between us had shifted quietly, but irrevocably, and perhaps that was the night I finally understood that not all secrets are created to protect a loving future. My name is Jake Miller, 32 years old, and I work as a financial analyst for an investment firm in Seattle. My job isn't exactly thrilling, but it's stable, and it gives me a sense of order I've always believed is the foundation for any sustainable relationship. I met Claire 3 years ago at an entrepreneurship workshop hosted by the University of Washington. She was a guest speaker, talking about her experience running marketing for a local coffee chain. I distinctly remember it was drizzling that afternoon, and she walked onto the stage with her blonde hair slightly damp, her voice warm and low, and her eyes bright. There was nothing flashy about Claire, but she had an energy that made you believe she knew exactly what she wanted. After her talk, I approached her just to say a few words of thanks, but the conversation stretched into over an hour. She told me about growing up in Oregon, about working shifts at coffee shops to pay tuition, and about her dream of starting her own coffee brand. I, in turn, talked about my dull office job, my habit of drinking straight espresso, and those small, mundane things no one usually cares about, but she listened as if every detail was gold. We started dating a few weeks later, and from our morning runs together to our evenings watching old movies on Netflix, I knew I was truly falling in love. Claire was different from anyone I'd ever dated. She was strong, confident, and always knew how to say the right thing to make someone feel seen. When I talked about numbers, she talked about emotions. When I worried about the future, she told me to enjoy the present. She made me feel lighter, as if life wasn't just about spreadsheets and savings plans. I used to think that was precisely why she was my missing piece. We moved in together after almost a year of dating. Our little apartment in Capitol Hill was always filled with morning light, and Claire made it cozy with potted plants, framed photos, and the smell of baked goods every weekend. She taught me that life didn't have to be perfect, just needed to be authentic, and I believed her. Then, when I proposed to her by the shore of Lake Washington last summer, Claire cried. I remember her saying, trembling, that she never thought someone as certain and organized as me would choose her, person who was still trying to sort everything out. At the time, I just assumed she meant her career. I had no idea that everything included a colossal amount of debt she'd hidden from me for 3 years. Looking back, I realized there were small signs I missed. She always insisted on paying cash when we ate out. She never used a credit card in front of me. Whenever I brought up joint finances, Claire would deftly change the subject. I always chalked it up to personality differences. Was the realist, she was the emotional one. I never suspected that her emotionality was a clever smokescreen for something she didn't want me to see. We used to spend long nights talking about our future, about the house with the wooden porch, the dog named Max she wanted, and me working remotely while she opened a small coffee shop down the street. It all felt so real, so tangible, and I believed we would achieve it all. But now, looking back, those dreams felt like they were built on sand, and one single wave named $150 was enough to wash them clean away. I still clearly remember the look in Claire's eyes that night. when she said, "My debt is our debt." Her eyes weren't those of a liar, but of someone desperate. And that's what confused me the most, because in that moment, I didn't know if I should feel betrayed, or just genuinely sorry for her. After that night, a thin layer of silence settled between Claire and me, like a light fog. It wasn't visible enough for an outsider to notice, but it was thick enough for me to feel in every subtle gesture. In the morning, she still made me coffee, but her eyes didn't linger on mine as long as before. And me, I still kissed her cheek before leaving for work, but my mind was haunted by one number, $150,000. It appeared on everything I looked at, the utility bill, the bank statement, even the movie stub she'd left on the table. I tried to act normal, but the harder I tried, the more I realized a part of me had started to doubt. I work in finance, so my curiosity wasn't emotional. It was the compulsion of someone used to documents, receipts, and hard figures. The following evening, when Claire said she had to meet a friend downtown, I stayed on the sofa, watching the yellow light stream through the curtains, my heart heavy. I opened my laptop and logged into the joint bank account we'd opened only last month. I just wanted to check for peace of mind, but what I saw froze me solid for 5 minutes. There was a recurring wire transfer every month, on the 15th, sent to an organization called Federal Student Loan Service. The amount wasn't small, $1,250. I did the quick math. Consistent payments like that meant the debt was real. And if her current payments were this high, the total debt remaining was likely at least $140,000. This wasn't a minor thing, and certainly not something you dismiss as some small student loans. I sat there for a long time, hearing only the hum of the AC and the traffic outside. A part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend I hadn't seen anything, but the other part, the rational, disciplined part, forced me to dig deeper. I pulled up some old documents, locating Claire's tax files she'd asked me to look over last year. Inside, I found a detail that made my chest tighten. It wasn't just the student loan. There were 2 other credit accounts, each owing over $20,000, all in her name. I flashed back to all the times she bought items on sale, saying she was just treating herself a little. I remembered the short weekend trips I thought she was paying for with savings. Everything now clicked together into a picture I desperately didn't want to believe. When Claire returned, I was still sitting there, laptop open, but I hadn't moved. She smiled, took off her coat, and then saw my expression. The smile vanished. "Did you find something?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if afraid of breaking something fragile between us. I didn't beat around the bush. I checked the account. I saw the student loan transfer and those 2 other credit cards. "What else haven't you told me?" She stood still for a long moment, then slowly sat down across from me. Her hands were clasped, trembling slightly. "I was going to tell you everything, I swear, but I was scared. Scared that if you knew the full extent, you'd leave." I let out a breath, unsure whether to be angry or sympathetic. "Claire, I'm not mad that you have debt. I'm mad that you chose to hide it from me. You know what I do for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I know. I didn't want to be a burden. I've had to take care of myself my whole life. I didn't want the man I loved to look at me like a financial risk." I was silent. A part of me understood her, truly understood, but another part, the part that had trusted her completely, was fractured. She reached for my hand, her voice pleading, I promise I'll pay it off. I just need more time. Don't let this number change the way you see me, okay? I looked into her eyes. Beyond the fear, there was something genuine, a little regret, a little wounded pride. But there was also something I couldn't quite name, like a curtain that hadn't been fully drawn back. We talked until almost midnight. She explained that she'd borrowed money since undergrad, and the high cost of living in Los Angeles only made things worse. She'd tried to pay it down, but switching jobs constantly had messed up her repayment plan. I listened, but every word she spoke felt like it was falling into a void in my mind. I no longer knew what was real. When she finally slept, I lay beside her, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting faint, streaky patterns on the wall. I thought about the proposal by the lake, the way she cried when she took the ring, and the certainty of belief I once had. And I knew from that moment on, my love carried an extra number, a shadow, an irremovable doubt. The days following our confrontation felt strange. There were no raised voices, no arguments, just a persistent, chilling silence clinging to every corner of our small Capitol Hill condo. We still spoke, still shared daily routines, but an invisible boundary had formed between us, thin as a breath, yet icy cold every time I brushed against it. I started noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. The way Claire kept her phone close, even when stepping into the bathroom. The way she avoided my gaze when I casually mentioned finances. Or the fact that every time I offered to help with her payments, she'd smile and say, "Don't worry, babe, I got this." One Friday evening, I came home earlier than usual. The office let us out early, and I planned to surprise her by cooking dinner. But when I opened the door, I saw Claire sitting at the dining table, phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and rushed. She didn't hear the door open, double quotes, ... I know, but he's getting suspicious. No, not yet, not yet. I'll tell you later. Okay, I miss you too. I froze. Who was she calling him? The door creaked slightly, and Claire whirled around, her face instantly drained of color. The phone dropped onto the table. She stammered, "Jake, I thought you were working late tonight." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her for a long time until the air in the room grew thick and heavy. Who were you talking to? Just a friend. An old friend asking about work. An old friend you miss. I asked, my voice dangerously flat. Claire was silent, her lips trembling slightly. You're misunderstanding. I gave a short, humorless laugh. I hope so. She stepped toward me, reaching for my arm, but I pulled away. Jake, I swear it's nothing. I'm stressed about work and the debt. I just needed someone to vent to. I looked at her. I wanted to believe her, desperately. But in my head, the fragments of doubt were assembling into a clear, sharp shape. An old friend. The sound of her voice, the way she rushed her words, didn't sound like a casual call. That night, I barely slept. Claire lay next to me, breathing steadily, while I just stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what I'd heard, but I knew that feeling, the chill running down my spine, wasn't a figment of my imagination. The next morning, after Claire left for work, I sat there with a cold cup of coffee, looking at her phone on the kitchen counter. It sat silently, daring me. I knew what I was about to do was wrong, but I couldn't stand the not knowing anymore. I picked it up and unlocked it thankfully. She hadn't changed the passcode. I scrolled through contacts, messages, and then stopped at a name saved simply as Ah. The latest message, sent last night. Don't call me again. He's suspicious now. I'll explain everything once this is over. I felt my heart constrict. My eyes were glued to the screen, to every word, yet my mind was numb. I read it once, and then again. No mistake. She was hiding something from me. And worse, there was another he in this story. All day, I couldn't focus at work. I checked everything again, the joint bank account, bills, credit card statements. Everything was clean, neat, nothing financially amiss. But there was something she was concealing, a part that the $150,000 was only the tip of. That evening, I asked her directly, "Claire, who is R?" She froze, then looked at me for a long moment, her eyes bewildered, then strangely hardening. "You went through my phone." I didn't answer. She let out a brittle laugh. "You did that, and you still claim to trust me. You told someone that he's suspicious now. You explain, is Ryan," she finally said, her voice dropping. "He's my ex. He helped me get the first loan back in college. I just didn't want you to get the wrong idea. Didn't want me to get the wrong idea, or didn't want me to know the truth." The tension was palpable. Claire turned away, her voice strained. "Jake, don't do this. I'm trying to save us. Don't push this any further." But I knew everything had already crossed the line. Once trust is cracked, there's no putting it back together whole. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the grey, cloud-covered Seattle sky. The dim light illuminated the window frame, reflecting the shadows of two people, one standing, one sitting, only a few feet apart, yet separated by an entire world. Later that night, after she was asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, opened my laptop, and logged into her loan accounts. This time, I found something I hadn't noticed before: co-signer's name, Ryan Carter. I stopped breathing. My heart plummeted. That name wasn't just an old friend. He was the person who co-signed the massive loan with her. I leaned back in the chair, my hands slightly shaking, and I understood this story wasn't just about debt. It was a web of deceit woven from fear, desperation, and maybe an unfinished emotional connection. I woke up earlier than usual the next morning. The weak light from the window filtered through the blinds, shining on the small kitchen where everything was exactly as it had been the night before. 2 unwashed coffee mugs, a newspaper half read, and on the counter the laptop. Screen dark, but in my mind, the words Ryan Carter were blazing like a burn mark. Claire emerged from the bedroom, hair tied back, wearing the cream-colored sweater I once told her looked good on her. She smiled, the soft smile I used to love, but this morning it brought me no peace. "You're up early?" she asked, her voice steady, as if nothing had happened last night. I paused, then simply stated, "Who is Ryan Carter, Claire?" The smile on her lips faltered instantly. I clearly saw her lower lip tremble, subtly, but enough to notice. She didn't say anything. I put my coffee mug down on the counter, my voice low. "I looked at your loan documents. I saw his name right next to yours. There's no way to explain that without him being involved, right?" She took a slow step back, leaning against the kitchen island, her eyes fixed on the tile floor as if searching for words. Then she spoke, small and hoarse. "Ryan was my former fiancé," solidified. I stared at her, unable to process the words. "What did you say?" "He and I were engaged 5 years ago. I was in grad school then, and he co-signed the loans for me. We broke up before the debt was fully paid off, and..." I never told you, because I was afraid you'd think I was still involved with him. I stood still, hearing my heart pound, yet my mind felt blank. Part of me wanted to believe her, but the other part felt every word she spoke as another twist of the knife. Does he know about us? I asked her. Claire nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. He knows. I didn't want him to, but he has the right to receive bank notifications. When he found out I was getting married, he contacted me to talk about the loan. I clenched my fists. And that's why you were talking to him? Because of the money. Because he threatened to call his share due if I didn't pay him off soon, Claire choked out. He said he'd come to you, tell you everything, if I didn't handle it. I panicked. I didn't want you to find out that way. I was wrong to hide it, but I didn't cheat on you, Jake. I was just terrified of losing you. I leaned my hands on the counter, fighting to remain calm. Claire, do you know what made me lose faith? It's not how much debt you have, it's that you thought I would leave you if I knew the truth. Tears streamed down her face. She walked closer, lightly touching my arm. I grew up with no one to lean on. I'm used to solving things myself. When you proposed, I thought it was my chance to start over, to be truly honest, but the closer we got to the wedding, the more scared I got. Scared that if you knew I wasn't perfect, you would leave. I hid it, not because I disrespected you. I just haven't learned how to trust that someone will stay, no matter how flawed I am. Her words caught in my throat. A part of me was furious, but another part felt an overwhelming, strange pity. She stood there small, trembling, trying to hold on to the shred of trust shattering between us. I turned away, not wanting her to see my eyes redden. So what does Ryan want? He wants me to pay off his share of the debt, about $80,000. Otherwise, he's threatening to sue me, since I'm the primary signer. I don't have the cash, Jake. I was planning to sell my shares in the company, but I didn't get a chance to tell you. I took a deep breath. A wedding plan, a 6-figure debt, and an old fiancé resurfacing to demand payment. I used to think these things only happened in movies, but now I was living it. She grabbed my hand tightly, her voice shaking. Please, don't look at me like a stranger. I don't need you to pay the debt. I just need you not to leave. I looked at her. She was telling the truth. I felt the raw fear in her eyes, not the fear of losing money, but the fear of losing someone who had made her feel loved without a catch. I stood in silence for a long time, then whispered, I don't know who I should be angry at anymore, Claire. I'm angry at you for hiding it, angry at him for coming back. But most of all, I'm angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. She broke down crying, burying her face in her hands. I stepped away, standing behind her, looking out the condensation-fogged window. The city was calm, cars were running, people were living, and only I was standing in a storm no one else could see. That night, I lay listening to the rain, thinking about the one question I hadn't dared to ask out loud. Can love survive after trust has died? 3 days after that conversation, I received a strange email to my work inbox. The subject line was brief, regarding Claire and the debt. My heart sank when I saw the sender's name, Ryan Carter, in the email. He wrote politely but coldly, stating that he wanted to resolve things maturely, that Claire still hadn't settled her part, and that he would be very sorry if he had to resort to legal measures. At the end, he proposed a direct meeting to discuss clearly between men. I stared at the screen for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. A part of me wanted to ignore it, The other urged me to confront it. I printed the email, laid it on the table, and walked into the living room. Claire was curled up on the sofa, hugging a tea mug, her eyes deep-set from lack of sleep. "Ryan contacted me," I said. She looked up, her face instantly pale. He said what?" "Everything. He wants to meet." She put the mug down, trembling. "Jake, don't go. I'll handle it. I just need more time." "No, Claire, enough. I need to know the truth. Not through an email, not through tears. Let's clear it up once and for all." She looked at me, her eyes wanting to say something, but she stopped. Then she just nodded slightly. The next afternoon, I met Ryan at a small coffee shop downtown. It was drizzling lightly in Seattle. The drops hit my leather jacket, leaving a heavy, damp smell. He walked in tall, neat, with bright eyes. The kind of guy who had everything under control and was used to being trusted. "Jake," he shook my hand, his voice low. "Thanks for coming." I sat opposite him, silent. He ordered an espresso, then began. "Claire and I were engaged. I assume she told you. When she was in grad school, I helped co-sign her loans because she didn't have enough credit. After we broke up, I tried to get my name taken off, but the bank wouldn't allow it because of the size of the loan. I paid a portion, and then she stopped. I don't want to sue, but it's been 3 years, Jake. 3 years." I listened, not interrupting. His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable layer of bitterness. I didn't know she was engaged again until I got the payment address change notification. I figured she was planning to shift the whole thing to you. He looked straight at me, his eyes not malicious, just tired. "I'm not here to sabotage anything. I just want closure." I took a deep breath. "I understand, but if she can't pay immediately..." Ryan pressed his lips together. "I'm willing to sign a new agreement, provided she commits to her share. I have no romantic feelings left, Jake. I just want to move on to..." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The man across from Mitha, one I had resented only days ago, was the only person speaking to me with the honesty I had craved from Claire. We ended the meeting with a brief handshake. Before leaving, Ryan said one thing that stuck with me. "You know, Claire's a good person, but sometimes she's more afraid of losing love than she is of losing herself." I got home late that evening. The apartment was dark, except for the light spilling from the kitchen. Claire was sitting there, eyes red, her phone and a piece of paper on the table. She looked up when she saw me, her voice hoarse. "I know you met Ryan." I didn't answer. She pushed the paper towards me. I signed the payment agreement. "I'm going to sell my company shares and pay my portion. I don't want you involved anymore." I looked at the paper. Beneath it was her signature, slightly shaky. "You don't have to do this alone, but I do, Jake," she replied, her voice breaking. "I've lived my whole life in fear of being abandoned. I thought hiding things would make it easier, but that's what destroyed everything. I have to fix it, even if it means losing you." I looked at her for a long time. Her tears fell onto the table, mixing with a spilled coffee stain. I wanted to hold her, but my body wouldn't move. Something inside, mere, small, shattered piece, was struggling between love and lost trust. "Claire," I said slowly, "I didn't need perfection. I just needed the truth." She burst into deep, broken sobs, as if finally allowing herself to let go. I got up, walked over, and wrapped my arms around her. Her body shook. Her hair smelled faintly of the lavender I used to love, but in that embrace, I knew this was not the hug of a new beginning, but of two people holding on to what was about to be lost. That night, she fell asleep on my shoulder. I stayed still, looking out the window. The rain was still falling, light, steady, persistent as if the sky was sighing too. And in that moment, I understood there are some cracks that never truly heal, no matter how hard you try to mend them. 3 months after that evening, the small apartment on Capitol Hill was mine alone. Claire was gone. There was no noise, no argument, no dramatic tears. Just one morning, when I woke up, she was simply missing. On the counter was a folded piece of paper, a short message written in her familiar handwriting. I need time to find myself. Please don't hate me, Jake. Thank you for loving me, even just for that while. Beside the letter was the engagement ring I had given her by Lake Washington. The morning light streamed through the window, reflecting a cold, sharp gleam onto the counter, like the last trace of sunshine from a season long past. I sat there, unsure how I should feel, relieved, hurting, or just empty. Perhaps all of them, all at once. The following weeks, I grew accustomed to the silence. The kitchen no longer smelled of baked goods. The corner of the living room where Claire used to leave her books was now just an empty space. I moved the potted plants she'd started out onto the balcony, watering them every morning, though I wasn't sure why I kept them. Maybe because, in them, there was still something that belonged to her, but also to the part of me that had trusted. I still went to work as usual, still drank my black espresso every morning, and still greeted my colleagues with a slight smile. But something in me had changed, part of my innocence, of my belief that love could fix all flaws, had left with Claire. One Saturday evening, I drove out to Lake Washington, where we had planned to get married. The water was still, reflecting the distant lights from the houses on the far shore. I stood there for a long time, listening to the wind through my ears, the gentle lapping of the water, and I thought about her. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a form of attachment, and to be angry, you have to still want to hold on. As for me, I only felt a strange sense of pity. Pity for a woman who had lived too long in fear, to the point where she didn't dare to trust that true love didn't need to be protected by a lie. I received an email from Ryan a while ago. He said Claire had sold her shares, paid off her part of the debt, and moved away from Seattle. He ended the email with a short line. She did the right thing. Maybe this time she's actually starting fresh. I read that sentence over and over, and then I smiled. Finally, she had perhaps found a way to face herself. And so had I. I learned that love isn't about carrying everything together, it's about trusting enough to reveal even the things we are most ashamed of. I turned and walked away from the lake, the cold wind blowing through my hair, but in my heart, there was a strange feeling, not regret, but clarity. The world is vast. Every person has their own cracks, and sometimes we only meet each other to teach one another how to look straight into those cracks without fear. When I got back to the condo, I turned on the light, poured myself a small glass of wine, and stood by the window, looking out at the city still brightly lit in the night. Through the soft drizzle of rain, I heard myself whisper, "One day, if you ever hear this story, know that I never regretted loving you, even just for that brief while." I raised the glass and offered a faint smile. Outside, Seattle continued to rain, lightly, like a quiet farewell, and in that moment, I knew everything had truly ended.